Speaking about the high-speed rail network, after weeks of speculation, Rishi Sunak instead unveiled a plan for Network North, saying the £36 million saved will be better spent on developing northern transport routes. The eastern leg to East Midland Parkway is also scrapped. HS2, though, will still run from London Euston to Manchester, but it'll run on existing tracks from Birmingham onwards. Here's what Rishi Sunak had to say.
We'll reinvest every single penny, £36 billion, in hundreds of new transport projects in the North and the Midlands across the country. This means £36 billion of investment in the projects that will make a real difference across our nation.
Well, in reaction to that, the former Prime Minister David Cameron criticised the announcement, writing on Twitter that a once-in-a-generation opportunity had been lost. And just about an hour ago, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson added, "I agree," to David Cameron's post. And the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, said the new investment plan didn't create a coherent transport network. But the Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, said although he was disappointed at the decision, he believed, all in all, it was a good compromise. Now, away from the party conference, 5 people have been arrested after Just Stop Oil protesters interrupted tonight's performance of Les Miserables at the Sondheim Theatre in London. Take a look. Well, if you're not watching on television and you're listening on the radio, what we're looking at is 4 members of Just Stop Oil holding up orange banners on the stage and then locking themselves to the front of the musical stage theatre. Actors stopped their performance. They were led off at the back of the stage. Stage management attempted to remove the activists as well. Audience members took it upon themselves to have shouted at Just Stop Oil activists to get off the stage too. Now, the Sunderland man who died after being attacked by an XL bully has been named by Northumbria Police as Ian Langley. Police attended the incident last night following reports a dog had injured the 54-year-old who was taken to hospital, already with life-threatening injuries. A 44-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder and an investigation has been launched. The dog was destroyed at the scene. A second had to be seized. And a 6th person's been arrested in connection with the Crooked House pub fire in Staffordshire. A 23-year-old man from Leicestershire was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit arson with intent. He's been released on conditional bail while the investigation continues. 4 men and a woman were previously arrested in connection with the fire that destroyed the iconic pub back in August. And lastly, the UK and Ireland are possibly set to host the Euros in 2028, pending final approval from UEFA's Executive Committee next week. That comes as Turkey withdrew its bid to host the European Football Championships. It instead has planned to merge bids with Italy. They're both going to go for 2032. In the UK, 10 stadia were earmarked to host the matches, including Glasgow's Hampden Park, the Principality Stadium in Cardiff, Dublin's Aviva Stadium and Wembley in London. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome to Headliners, your first look at Thursday's papers. Joining me tonight, we have the Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee of GB News, in no particular order. That is Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. Evening, gentlemen.
So which one am I? No particular order?
In no particular order. We'll let that pan out and the audience will decide.
I'd prefer to be Debbie McGee because she wound up with millions.
She did, absolutely.
I'll take Daniels then, because he was the talent.
Daniels was the talent anyway. He was a much misunderstood individual in my view. Very like a genuine magician. He had the craft.
Real magic.
He did, absolutely. We have the front pages. We kick off with the Telegraph. Huge decisions to change Britain. We have Rishi and his wife there. Guardian. Sunak ignites Tory civil war after declaring he is the change candidate. Can that be plausible? The Times, son of a pharmacist, casts himself as Thatcher's heir. Intriguing take on it. Daily Mail, Rishi gave Tories a reason to believe he can save us from Keir's wokery. Express, game changer, Rishi's radical policy blitz to fix Britain. And the Daily Star, an outlier as ever, we've really hit the skid. Supermarket forced to put security tags on bog rolls to end shoplifting epidemic. Those were your front pages. So, kicking things off with the Telegraph, Lewis.
Huge decisions to change Britain. And he listed the three major decisions which will have relatively little impact on the global and our own situation.
Right.
The first one is smoking is effectively to be banned for future generations with phased age limit, which is the New Zealand method, which is there'll be a time when someone who's 19 won't be able to smoke, but someone who's 20 will be able to smoke.
And then they'll just carry on rolling that up to the ages. So
forever.
Eventually you'll be a 48-year-old man hanging around at a newsagent, hoping that a 50-year-old man will buy you some cigarettes.
Yeah, it'll be a proper police state.
Yeah.
Which is maybe the dream of what the powers that be want.
I mean, I feel slightly ambivalent on this. I've got to say, I would imagine, generally speaking, GBNews, our audience of a libertarian bent, would think that adults can choose for themselves whether to smoke or not. But on the other hand, they've made it so ridiculously expensive. It's such a hostile environment for smokers now. It does feel like, should we just let the other shoe drop and ban it outright? Would that not make more sense? It's obviously teetering unsustainably on the edge of that, isn't it? What do you think, Nick?
Well, yeah, I almost don't like talking about this because I'll get hate online because I am more on the freedom side. And as I said to you before, Tolkien believed that pipe smoking was a moral good.
Yeah.
And I understand all that. But I personally hate smoking so much that I always say I'm a fascist on this one issue. But I'm not saying I would go with the ban. I'm just saying part of me is not as against it as I normally should be.
I know what you mean. And I have to say, as a stand-up comic as well, when they banned indoor smoking, the environment for performing in improved immeasurably. I mean, it had a little bit, maybe some of the atmosphere was missing, you know, the photogenic nature of the sort of jazz club vibe. But
eventually, over time, people would have banned smoking inside. They wouldn't have banned it. It wouldn't have been a law, but there would be, like, you go into a place where there's smoking and people wouldn't have visited.
I mean, occasionally, do you ever go, like, I remember, I think the last time for me was probably Abu Dhabi or something like that. Massive five-star hotel, huge marble desks and floor, and people smoking in there. It was almost like watching something really unsanitary, like some foul, primitive activity. Anyway,
and Nietzsche said...
I can't say I'm against it.
Nietzsche said, what is falling, we must push. But we don't need to push it, because cigarette smoking is going down. When they make it illegal, it's going to come right back.
That is true.
A Nietzsche quote, and it wasn't from you, Simon. I never saw that coming. That was incredible.
What about his... He didn't like drinking either, though, so I'm not sure how sound he was. What about A-levels?
A-levels will be replaced with exams that include mandatory English and maths. I'm going to have to give this to Nick, because Nick is the expert in the British school
educational system.
Even though I've had...
It's like they're switching to an American system, majors and minors. That's roughly what they are, although that's a college thing rather than a... What do you think?
It's the one bit of the speech that I'd actually ignored, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm sure it's very important. I mean, scrapping
what
A-levels
he's trying to
is a big
do,
deal,
which I appreciate this in theory, but it's one of those endless... It's a myth of Sisyphus kind of scenario because you're constantly trying to work against human nature. But he wants to minimise the sort of difference in esteem and status between A-levels and what they currently call T-levels, which are more practical qualifications, like, it's similar to an apprenticeship. And I approve of that. But you will always struggle to convince people to what's the word? Conceal that there is an academic gap between hard work, and then learning how to use some tools.
The question is, can the state, can the government change this? And from what I know about this country, it's micromanaging the educational system. Let the schools decide what they want to do. Take the government out of it. And
well, you could go with that to an extent and say, I've been saying for a long time, voucher system for schools, teachers get some choice where they spend their vouchers. So every child you get £6,000 a year, you can spend it where you want. Some schools might offer A-level, some might offer baccalaureate, as they call it, some might offer a more American system. Some might just say, we'll train your kid just generally, it'll be a liberal education.
Or something better, which is not take people's money and not give it out. How about that?
And not train kids are cool, just like have them harvesting.
You know what? If they're not trained, they're not trained.
Yeah.
And somebody has to dig the ditches in this country without relying on imported labor.
What do you think, Nick?
Well, I think there's so much more to get onto in the speech. We haven't even touched HS2 yet, which is the big... It wasn't a big reveal because it already leaked, but that was the big part of the speech. And he said that every penny would be reinvested. So he said, I'm scrapping it, but 36 billion is going to the north in other types of investment. You could argue every penny would be the 100 billion that he was speculating would be wasted. But I think that's perfectly... I mean, most people seem to think HS2... I don't know about most people. Many people think it was a mistake. So I don't think he's going to get in too much trouble for that. The big question for me is, was this speech enough? They needed a kind of Hail Mary. I don't think it was that. It was decent. You know, Sunak always comes across smart, nice, intelligent. He cares about fiscal responsibility. His wife gave him a great intro, which was nice to see in a world where men are hated.
She features in all the photographs as well. She's obviously livened up the pictures.
It was interesting, but was it enough? That's my question, and I'm not quite sure it was. And Farage, as we know, has been dominating the conference. My big prediction, I'm the first person to say it, is that Farage will get into the Tories, he will become leader, and he'll win a general election. I've even given a date, 2029.
You're not the first person to say it in my hearing, but maybe on this show.
Number one.
Well, it has been an overwhelmingly positive reaction on the front pages. One front page, which is possibly heretical, is The Guardian, and they also have a story about England being the most difficult place to find a home.
Yeah, so England, most difficult place to find a home. It pretty much does what it says on the tin. Quite shocking, really. It comes from the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, who could have a better name. But the idea is that England has the lowest percentage of vacant homes per capita, and other problems where a quarter of private renters are overburdened by housing costs, and so on. Plus, I don't even mention, as far as I can see, that the whole process is a nightmare. When you try and buy a home in England, it can fall through at any time. It can go on for years.
But the worst thing that's happened in terms of buying a home at the moment, surely, is the elevation of interest rates, right? That has made it extraordinarily difficult. But this is the one thing they can't control.
Yeah, well, don't mention that there are 1 million people coming into the country this year. And you know what? This is something that's been put up by the Home Builders Federation of who want more building. So this is a PR pitch. It's a non-news item.
You're only going to get that. Well, that's the way the news operates these days. But you're only going to get that from people who want to build houses. But they're not necessarily evil for wanting to do that. They're asking that. Most, I think, neutral observers say that planning laws are extraordinarily draconian and impenetrable in this country.
No, they don't. They don't say that. And for good reason.
Yeah, because you've got environmental laws. It is very difficult. Can I just say one more thing as well? Yeah, The Guardian have gone with the idea that Sunak ignites Tory civil war after declaring he's the change candidate. That is a difficult pitch when you've been in for 13 years. He's trying to be the change candidate, and he's having a pop at Starmer, and it sounds like they're the opposition and Starmer's in. That's another strange
Starmer's going to drift back to Blairism. Finish off with the Daily Star very quickly. We've really hit the skids. Bog roll epidemic. What I don't understand.
Well, there's a lot of criminality going on out there because the laws are not being enforced and people aren't being punished. I mean,
is it because the laws aren't enforced, or is it because there's been a change in the natural inclination of people just to respect the law? Because I think shoplifting would be impossible to police if everyone started doing it.
Well, it would be easy to police if they arrested somebody and maybe killed them. People need to be killed. I'm not saying they need to be killed. I'm making a joke when I say that, of course. But at the end of the day, people used to be sent to Australia. They used to be killed, and then they were sent to Australia for stealing.
We used to have the sort of moral code of the pastoralist communities, the shepherds, who knew that you wouldn't be able to protect all your flock, so you had to make the punishment for stealing one so extraordinarily vicious.
Well, if you've got...
I didn't think shepherds would come up so early in the show tonight.
And getting shepherds in earlier and earlier every night. Do you have anything to say on that, or should we go to the break?
No, really, it's good. They're going to have to. We're talking later about vigilantes and civil arrests, so they're going to have to get. People are going to be tackled for trying to get bog roll out of the shop.
Well, I think there is something to that. You know, we see... I think one of the other things is, and we're all talking about this all the time, social media changes people's perceptions of how the world works. We see so much video content nowadays of people behaving badly in shops, often from America, Target and Walmart, you know, people just blatantly shoplifting. I can't be surprised at that.
That's not shoplifting, that's rioting and looting.
Rioting and looting. Let's take a look into the next break. We have carbon footprints in the sand and carnivore dogs in the doghouse. That's all coming up in the next section. Keep it here. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. I'm Simon Evans, joined tonight by Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. So, Lewis, we kick off this section with the Times and a new police initiative which should liven up the weekly shop.
Well, I'm not saying it's a new police initiative because it was presented at some fringe event at the Tory conference. Mm-hmm. This guy Chris Philp.
Yeah.
Is that the way you pronounce his name?
I think so, yeah.
Chris Philp, and I think that's a Romanian name. I actually looked it up. He's the Minister for State for Crime, Policing and Fire, and he's advocating retailers basically grabbing people by the leg and doing a citizen's arrest.
And indeed fellow shoppers as well. Citizen's arrest, of course, is one of those, it's almost a sort of mythical possibility, isn't it? You usually learn about it when you're 14 or 15 and you start fantasising about superhero action.
Until you try it and you get arrested because you've used too much force.
Or you get stabbed, of course. I can't imagine many situations. I'm 58, maybe it's not aimed at me, maybe it's a young man's game, citizen's arrest, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone I know.
No, we've reached the vigilante stage of our culture. Encourage vigilantism. I mean, it's extraordinary. In a time where people have knives and will stab you just for fun.
Machetes, swords.
The idea that you should be tackling people. I mean, Philp here says that where it's safe to do so. I think where is it safe to do? Singapore. Where is it safe to do so?
You see a really old lady taking a tin of cat food,
right? And you just read at the Magna Carta,
then you know that you're probably
or someone with some kind of like genital deformity or something. Somebody who's like really in bad shape. Not that I'm against any of that. Look at my tie. You didn't mention my tie. Look at my tie. D. Norga got this tie for me.
Maybe carry mace or something. Would that work?
It's you know what? No, you can't do it because that would be probably some violation of some British English law.
Also terrible because we saw it happen in America where Daniel Penny tackled that guy and ends up with a manslaughter charge. And even the police here are handing over their guns because they're not protected. What protection is? am I going to have if I punch a guy in Sainsbury's?
I know it is the supermarkets and Co-op have come up by name occasionally. How about you have a red button on the door that allows a citizen to just close the doors until help arrives, and then you can all just run around the shop.
Well, I've seen that in America. They have that, and then what they do is they smash through it and they cause unbelievable amount of...
The other problem is they go, that was the guy that pressed the red button last week, and then the whole gang gets you.
Yeah.
Nick, staying with the Times, time to get a moment of self-examination and reflection out of the way. This story is coming from inside the House.
Yeah, thanks for giving this one to me. This is Lawrence Fox sat by GB News and arrested over ULEZ vandalism claim. Now, the first part, it will come as no surprise, sadly. We've heard, I think, enough about that, probably, and I wish Lawrence the best, and he knows that, and that's unfortunate. The second part was outrageous. These police came to his house. There's so many more things the police could be doing. They're in Lawrence Fox's house looking for evidence that he's the guy behind the ULEZ, the Blade Runners. He's the kingpin of the Blade Runners. And, you know, you think of all the other things the police could be doing. Now, there is the argument that Lawrence has sort of implied that he would take these cameras down and therefore perhaps he's asking for it. But then again, you go, Chris Packham on Channel 4 on a state-owned broadcaster openly said, I think it's time to start breaking the law. Yeah. So is there a two-tier justice system, we have to ask?
And it's funny, they're actually on quite similar grounds as well, aren't they? As in, it's all on the climate crisis. So it seems like there is, it's OK to break the law if you are anxious about the climate, but not if you're anxious about people trying to use the climate in order to roll out draconian measures against motorists. What do you think? Well,
I think the whole thing is a tragedy because it affects us here at GB News. Because I mean, personally, you could say he said something wrong, said something illegal, but the fact is that 7 police come to the guy's house without a warrant. You don't need a warrant in this country. What is this? The Soviet Union?
I don't know. I mean, there is no sense that there's any connection between the two, so we should make that absolutely clear. I don't think the police were responding.
There is a connection. They would not have arrested him if he wasn't affiliated with GB News. That means any one of us.
We certainly don't know that. We have no way of knowing that. And there's no indication. He's been certainly advocating damage. The question is, as will emerge in the courts, I imagine, is whether or not advocating it is considered to be a sort of accessory before.
Well, I apologise, but
that's okay. I mean, but I think we have to be clear that there is no suggestion at the moment.
No, there is a suggestion, but it may not be fact. Yeah. So we're going to say we're going to leave it open, but it looks very dodgy. Are we allowed to say that it looks dodgy?
You're allowed to say that. I think we have to recognise that the police would dispute that at the moment.
Okay, you can say that. That's your job.
Not a connected incident.
Good job, Simon. That's your job.
Okay.
Balance in a place where we need no balance.
And climate change tourism rather than activism, as we used to call it, telly. I think this is.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about this a lot, about travelling around the world, and so this holiday firm, Intrepid Travel, put out a little press release, and that's what more and more the news is. So Intrepid Travel wanted their name in the newspaper, so they did a little survey where they said, what are the trends in climate change tourism? What's going to happen with climate change tourism? Greece and Majorca are going to be on fire, and so people won't be able to go there, so they're going to go Slovenia, Slovakia.
Greece on fire. There used to be public information films about that in the 70s.
Yeah.
Throw a wet tea cloth over it, I think.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Or I think maybe it was
chip pan fire.
That was that song, Wheels on Fire. That was the other one. And so this is saying, be scared, the kids are scared.
Listen, the truth is, if the climate change is as serious as they're suggesting, Britain will be a destination and will be earning a fortune. We'll be able to overtake France. What do you think, Nick?
Won't we be underwater?
Well, no, we'll be
London
glorious. It'll just be like 32 degrees.
Oh, right, yes,
every
Guatemala.
day.
Yeah. Well, this, I mean, it's one of these things that sounds like a conspiracy until it happens. I mean, carbon passports and personal carbon allowances, all very dystopian. And remember, the C40 Cities group already suggested that we should have one short-haul flight every 3 years. And they're a group that covers 96 major urban centres in 6 continents. They're a serious group, but, and they come up with this bizarre stuff. And so, it's becoming a reality, isn't it? And
I suppose the question is, should the ability to travel, enjoy long-haul journeys, if it does become evident that there is a consensus, rightly or wrongly, that this sort of stuff is, damning us all to an uninhabitable Earth in a couple of generations, should that be something you can use wealth to overcome, or should it be distributed just fairly? Should we say, if you've got enough money, you can pay for the carbon offset, you can fly as often as you want, or should we say, you've got 1,000 miles each per person, you can bank them for a couple of years and have a decent holiday, or you can have 3 city breaks, do you know what I mean?
I will give you the answer to this question, which is, which is no one should be thinking about this. It's a waste of our time. I'm still waiting for the Maldives to be flooded, and they're not flooded, and nothing is happening, and they've got tidal gauges in every major city around the world, and there's no increase in the tides and in what's going on, and it's almost impossible to measure whether the water is going up and down. So listen to me. You're only 58. You're so young. I wouldn't worry about it. I am not worried about climate change.
Mirror now, Nick, and experts claim that sexual abuse of children can be no worse than strict parenting.
Yeah, strict parenting habit can be as damaging to kids as sexual abuse experts warn, and you immediately think, nah, that's not true. I mean, that's ridiculous. But it's saying 40% of children are affected by verbal abuse, and they have a greater risk of self-harm, drug use, and even jail time in later life. I don't know if that means greater than sexual abuse or just greater than if they didn't get verbal abuse. Yeah. And so they talk about it's characterised by shouting, yelling, denigrating the child. Well, who hasn't done that? I mean, I'm not a parent, but you know, I think the conclusion is, Simon, it's better to hit them. I think that's what I'm getting from the piece. I mean, what can you do?
You can never do it right. I mean, it is famously, it's one of the things the newspapers endlessly guilt trip you about. Not that much, too much, less, more, less. But of course, also, parents are constantly not getting enough sleep, constantly infuriated, constantly trying to balance all kinds of, you know, one child's well-behaved, the other one isn't well-behaved. What do? Let the well-behaved one see that the other one goes unpunished? Impossible job, impossible.
Well, I think Nick is right, because basically it's saying that childhood verbal abuse, shouting, yelling, threatening, and criticizing a child unfairly, is not strict parenting. It's abuse. And so it's not that strict parenting, as the headline says, strict parenting habit can be damaging to kids. No. It's not that it's damaging. It's a bad parenting is damaging to kids.
Screaming at kids. There's always this distinction drawn in all the parenting manuals between authoritative and authoritarian, essentially. So are you like behaving like a tyrant, like a dictator, who has no, or is it the rule of law and you're strict in enforcing?
You have to have both of those.
Well, no, you don't need to be a tyrant, because then
but you have to be. But you're still the boss. You have to be authoritarian. You've got to tell the kid you're not running into the street.
Because if you're authoritarian, that means you're the source of the law. You're Judge Dredd.
Sometimes you need to say you're not going into that road. Sometimes you need to say, you know what?
That can be a rule all the time. You don't need to be with.
Yeah, well, so you're enforcing it. You're going into the road. You're going to be in trouble.
Guardian now, Lewis.
I'm a very good
dogs.
I'm a very good parent.
Of course you are, in theory.
I was for a couple of years before I stopped seeing my kids. Anyway, so...
vegan dogs.
Vegan dogs. Sorry, this is in The Guardian. Of course, The Guardian's pushing veganism. It's saying world's dogs going vegan could save more emissions than the UK produces. And these are researchers at the University of Winchester. They're saying that they are trying to convince dogs and cats to go vegan, or the people who own them to go vegan, and because they're eating it is a lie, a total lie, which is animals cause CO2 increases. That's a lie. It's a lie that CO2 increases are destroying the planet. The whole thing, you got to stop, come in and say, Lewis, most people don't believe this, but this is a lie. And anyway, dogs are omnivorous, but basically carnivorous. They eat a lot of meat.
I agree that dogs don't really like eating a vegetable diet.
And neither do...
But I am surprised, I'm amazed. They're saying like if they could cut out something like 10% of the animal food that's produced, so it goes into dogs. That's extraordinary.
But you know what? It has no relationship with pollution, and it has, not even pollution, with this climate change ridiculousness.
What do you think, Nick?
Well, it's dog abuse, isn't it? I mean, we've already domesticated dogs, taken them from wolves and humiliated them, and now they can't even eat meat, which is appalling. And then you think, well, why don't they just get rid of pets? And that there has been suggested by these nutters, remember? So that's where this goes. And then they go, why don't we just get rid of people? Just be a lovely planet, just no one on it. That's where it goes.
Nick is exactly right. That's exactly what it's all about.
I do think
we hate people, and we hate people's dogs and pets.
I do think possibly that, we've seen things like lab-grown meat and the bacon and all that stuff, and no human really wants to eat that stuff. But maybe we could get away with that with dogs.
No, you can't.
Bill Gates is synthetic dog meat.
One of my closest friends had a beautiful, beautiful dog, even a dog that I liked, and I'm not a dog lover. No. And a beautiful dog died of cancer because she ate a crunchy, plant-based diet.
That's what I was going to say, a crunchy bar.
Terrible. That is it for part 2. Coming up, we have Witchcraft in Devon, Animals in Heaven, and Naughty Keegan Kevin. A little bit of a twist there to make that work, but anyway, hopefully it satisfied you. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
And welcome back to Headliners. So The Guardian now, Nick, Exeter University is likely to become Exeter University.
Oh, yeah.
Get it?
Good. Yeah, I got it. It was good. But, of course, they won't get it yet until I explain the story, which is that British University offers master's degree in magic and the occult. So, as you say, University of Exeter. And there's an interesting line here. This is The Guardian, by the way. It says, if you've been getting into crystals, manifesting your dream board, or exploring feminist readings of witchcraft, I thought you're probably a Guardian reader. But the actual answer is you can now take your hobby to the next level with basically a degree in Satanism. That's what it is. And you know what? I think this is OK to study academically if you were doing it purely objectively. But that's not really the vibe I get. They talk about decolonisation.
That was the thing I noticed. She's turning it into a decolonisation stroke racism feminism. It's being made into a left-wing thing, whereas actually the occult and magic, that's neutral politically, right? There's people, a lot of people who are into that are quite right-wing libertarian, the Church of Satan.
Nah, not really. It tends to be leftist these days. But yeah, exactly. Decolonisation, feminism, anti-racism, and they're talking about the growth of this kind of thing, which is because of the decline in organised religion. Another way of putting it is we've declined from Christianity to Satanism.
It all started with the Da Vinci Code, of course, which re-established the notion of, like, the divine feminine as being at the heart of all true religions, and the patriarchal Catholic Church having ruined that. What do you think, Lewis?
I didn't read that book.
You didn't read it?
No. I mean, this sounds like one of those classes at school where that sounds like really fun and really easy, and you get there and the teacher is like, say, this is serious business, and you just regret taking it. I took a course like this at Bard College called Leisure, and I thought it was going to be so easy.
I mean, I've got to say, 30 years ago, if you wanted to do a degree in magic, good luck to you. Now, you're going to come out of that with 50 grand's worth of debt, at least. You're going to wonder how many people are going to employ you. What, are you going to open a shop
it's not necessarily
on like
vocational,
Street
is
in
it?
New York? No.
Unless you become
Feels like
the actual
quite
devil.
a luxury. Anyway, Lewis, gay sex in the animal kingdom, that serves a valuable purpose, and it's nothing to do with disco.
No, it's nothing. But gay sex between animals evolved for a very important reason, and the reason is that animals are really, really beautiful. They're just lovely, lovely doughy eyes and lovely rumps.
We're talking about between animals here, not
Oh, between animals.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, I guess it's not gay sex then. These are researchers in Spain who are saying that there are 1,500 species who have some kind of gay sex thing, and so they did a review of the studies, and they came up with an answer, which is not an answer, it's just like a guess of why these animals are getting along.
Right.
This is a total non-story, because they said that's getting along because if animals can have sex with each other in the absence of mates, of opposite-sex mates, is that they can get along better with each other.
But the idea is it reduces intersexual competition, which can lead to bloodshed and destroy the species.
Well, that's not covered that well in the article. My favourite bit is you're trying to figure out why they're doing it, and it says it includes cases of mistaken identity, limited availability of partners, or sexual frustration. So it's essentially short-sightedness, prison conditions, or incels, basically.
They're incels. This is
animal
incels. Well, we talked before about René Girard.
Probably.
René Girard,
Anything you talk about.
quite recent philosopher, French origin, taught in Stanford, taught Peter Thiel, the great investor, and taught him everything he knows. And he has this theory that all desire is mimetic. You only want what you see other people wanting, what you see there is evidence. And that this can create a lot of friction in human societies as well. All men tend to decide that one or two women are the most beautiful ones. There may be very scant difference, but as soon as they start to become the most desired.
Or women like you because they see you with an attractive woman. That's classic.
Exactly.
Social
Or
proof.
they associate you with a powerful watch or an expensive car, whatever. And
is that an Apple
your
Watch?
guy, I'm not pointing at this one, but your man Tate understands all this. Anyway,
mate.
this is where he says an awful lot of intra-tribal aggression comes from this, because you can't all have the same thing. And it seems like the animals have found a solution to
Well,
this.
the guy who came up with that stuff was probably Thorsten Veblen, if you know him. And he did the theory of the work of the leisure class is the idea of conspicuous consumption.
Right. Yeah.
And that was from the 1900s. Anyway, there's no such thing as gay sex.
Can I just say, the GB News haters, sorry, if they heard Simon's disposition on Giroud, they'd be like, this is not the channel I thought. Sorry, I've mispronounced.
Girard, and he
I was thinking of the
Catholic
Arsenal
Church.
footballer, sorry.
Singapore news now in The Guardian, Nick. It's putting ULEZ into perspective, certainly.
Yeah, this is certificate to own a car in Singapore rockets to $106,000, which is extraordinary. It just seems absolutely mad. I mean, it just seems to be that is the case. It's just rocketed. It's all to do with demand, and it was less during the pandemic, then it went up.
This is essentially congestion charge, but you pay for it all in one go, right? And it's
kind of, yeah. And what's so shocking is, people talked about Singapore on Thames. You thought that meant some sort of free market paradigm. Actually, just means a sort of rationing system where it's very hard to afford even a car.
Thrown in jail for spitting gum.
Well, that's the thing. At least they solved the crime. What we'll have if we go down this route is a sort of crime-ridden, authoritarian hellhole. At least they sort the gum problem. But this sociologist, Tan, is saying that it's the Singapore dream to have cash, condominium and a car, which is not a great dream, but even that has gone now. And he says the dream of a good life has gone. Now it's a good enough life.
Well, they have. I mean, I've been to Singapore a couple of times. I can't say I really like, but I'm not that great in that kind of level of temperature and humidity. But it's often held up as the most successful city-state of the last 50 years, right? It took it from nothing,
probably
from
by cyclists,
colonial
I'm
poverty
guessing.
to its, I think, the second most capitalist, successful, wealthy. And yet it just seems to be incredibly dysfunctional in so many ways.
Well, they have to do it. They have to do it because of the... Whatever, I'm not going to discuss Singapore with you, but it is dysfunctional. But the point is this is in The Guardian, this story, and they're basically preparing us, Nick and Simon, for these kind of draconian taxes to prevent us from owning cars to be net zero, because they don't want us to drive, they don't want us to go anywhere. They want us to die.
Yeah, for balance, I do agree. I also like the position of, on a story about Singapore, refusing to discuss Singapore with you. That's an eccentric position.
As if it's some perversion of mine or something else.
No.
He's always on about Singapore.
Yet more vegan news to enrage you now, Lewis, and it seems that carnivores just lack the genes to go vegetarian. Is that right?
Yeah, well, that's what they... this is another one of those stories. There's a study in PLOS 1, which is a publication, a science publication, that says says that some of the headline is meat eaters may not have the genes to cope with vegetarianism. That you need special genes. That vegetarians are able to actually live on a vegetarian diet. Question is, what is a vegetarian diet? Does it include eggs? Does it include cheese? We don't know what it is. Anyway, or do they mean a vegan diet? A vegan diet is untenable. It's because it misses 15 or more necessary nutrients. And what they're
I suppose it's the question about cravings, and to be honest, I think that's more like grease and salt than some. It's not what people think of as meat cravings. I don't think those are meat cravings. I think they're cravings for some flavour.
No, they are not. As a person who eats 100% meat, and my tie says beef, it's not a craving. As your body is missing the necessary nutrients, of which there are 15 that are not in a vegan diet. Leucine, all this stuff is not in there.
So it's not in the genes. I mean, the genes do affect whether or not your tie is in close-up. Genes do affect whether or not you can give up smoking, for instance. That's been proven. Some people find
young
it
generation
much harder.
won't have to face it, thanks to Rishi.
No, that's right.
But yeah, I mean, I have to say I agree with Lewis again. I mean, vegetables make me ill, and vegetarians make me ill. But it's apparently 64% of self-identified vegetarians still eat fish or poultry. It's a myth. You can't actually be a vegetarian. This is what we're learning. You always find, except for like occasionally, there's some 102-year-old woman on an island somewhere only eats algae or whatever. But mainly, I think it's a myth.
It is a myth. It is a myth.
Times now, Nick.
We need balance,
Kevin Keegan showing every one of his 72 years as he claims women's football is not identical to men's.
Yeah, good luck to Kevin. Kevin Keegan criticises lady footballers talking about England men. So, I mean, look, obviously we're totally against any kind of misogyny, but, you know, Kevin Keegan has said he's not as keen on it. He doesn't really listen to the ladies talking about the England men's team because he doesn't think it's the same experience. He thinks it's a different game, essentially. Though he did concede that Terry Yorath's daughter, meaning Gabby Logan, is good. So, you know, it's fair enough, really. It's a lot of people feel this way. You're not really allowed to say it, but it's a different game. You know, the men have played that game. The women can come out on the women's game, and some people don't think that the two cross over.
I tend to agree, although I suppose I'm always feel a bit of a hypocrite because I don't really like watching football that much anyway, but I still feel it's a bit more kind of authentic when you see somebody who looks as if they've had a few bruises on the pitch. I mean, I guess that's...
Well, what you're doing is you're doing the right thing, which is you're judging this article based on headline, which is Kevin Keegan criticized lady footballers.
Yeah.
But the truth is, there was very little criticism. He says the presenters we have now, meaning the ladies, some of the girls are so good, they are better than the guys. It's a great time for the ladies to be presenters. So it's hardly a criticism.
No, the only criticism he made was he was saying when you watch a man's game and you have an ex-female player rather than commentator, and she says what I would have done in that situation or what we, you know. And he's like, yeah, but it might not work in the men's game because it's a different situation. He's actually quite pro. Yeah. He's certainly pro women playing, right?
Yeah, and because he was a manager. You're right about this. This is the Times lying.
That's it for this section. In the final section, we have Fit But Fat, Lit Black Cat and Tit for Tat. Got through it. See you at 2.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the final part of Headliners. Lewis, kick us off now with the Telegraph discussing feminine dietary challenges in language that should surely get them cancelled.
Yes, because they use the FAT word. Quarter of middle-aged women are fit but fat, study finds. And they did a study and they said that 27% of UK women are metabolically healthy, though they're fat. Yeah. But at the same time, so this study says they're healthy, but they're should lose weight. They don't. Why should they lose weight if
they don't need to lose weight? I want to know if they're fat but fit or fit but fat. I think fat but fit is.
They are fat but fit.
Yeah. But they say fit but fat, but I think it's fat but fit, isn't it?
What it is, I'm going to tell you what it is, because I actually understand this thing, and it wasn't in the article, and it was on the annual meeting of the European Association for the Study of Diabetes, is that it is possible to be healthy and fat, because what fat is a way for us to keep stores of food and water for the dark times during wintertime. Yeah. And people in northern climates, 27% of people in the north are this way, but Asians and Micronesians less than 5%, because they don't need to store fat, so they don't have the ability to store fat. So fat storage, if you have that ability, you're in good shape. Because
Fair enough. I know they have brown fat, which is also good for going into cold seas.
Yeah, because it produces heat.
Anything on this, Nick? Don't think you have to.
Nothing amazing. It just sounds more like a Pearl Davis live stream than a Telegraph article. But the thing is, it all comes from BMI, and the problem is BMI is a flawed metric.
Absolutely.
Excellent point.
Nick, Metro now, and we stay with fitness and diet. We've seen a pill that kills appetite. Now we have a magic muscle pill by the sound of it.
Well, or at least a magic cardio pill. Scientists have made a pill to replace exercise, but don't hang up the trainers yet. So there were two mice, Simon, in San Diego in a facility. Let me take you back to the start of this. One was called Couch Potato Mouse, the other Lance Armstrong Mouse. And
it cheated.
Well, that's the thing. You sort of do that as a joke, and then you realise, well, yes, it's taking a drug named GW5011516 or 516 for short, which is not a great abbreviation, but and that mimics the effect of exercise on the body. The only thing is it will boost metabolism and it'll trick them into thinking that the muscles thinking it'll burn more fat and so on. I'm not convinced you can stop lifting yet as mice because it doesn't give you muscle, although there is some evidence that it moves you towards slow twitch muscle fiber. So maybe that's on the horizon. But to me, I'd consider taking this to stop the cardio, because I hate cardio, but still get your lifting in.
Still get
men
the lifting.
And mice and women.
Do we know whether mice have the same sort of ratio of slow and fast twitch, or whether, I mean, I know some mice have human lungs now, don't they, because they've bred them that way in order to be able to test drugs on them. They actually have human lungs. I know it.
I don't know. Can I just say this? This is just one more newspaper pushing drugs. This is all they want to do. They want to tell that all of our problems are going to be drug saved. The truth is, the single thing you can do to get muscles is eat red meat. Look at Louis Schaefer, 66 years old. You can't feel. Do you want to feel the muscle here?
You've still got to lift, because even with steroids, you don't lift.
I mean, Lucy's making a serious point here. I think there is an awful lot of suggestion that we can eliminate good behaviour by just taking some miracle drug at the moment. That does seem depressing
Right,
for
like
a lot of the
Ozempic is
news.
another
Yeah,
one,
exactly.
yeah.
I can't help thinking this is leading us into,
Hell.
we've been warned about this kind of stuff.
Yes, they're pushing, right, Orwell, whatever. Or is it Orwell?
Eat meat,
fables,
lift
it's
weights.
like a Faustian pact or something, isn't it?
You don't have to lift weights.
OK, Lewis, over to the Telegraph. Further evidence that cats are in league with the devil.
Oh my God, this is all animals all the time here. Cats, we have mice, we have dogs. This is the curator at the Western Australian Museum. He found that 125 animals glow in the dark.
Wow.
And this is like really big news. Oh, wait a second. In 1911, they discovered this originally, that humans, that we actually glow in the dark.
Oh, we do too, heads.
Yeah, yeah. We and can I ask a question? Did you? I read the article. I didn't see it. Why do we glow in the dark? There was a postulate.
Is it phosphorescence normally, isn't it?
Yeah, but why? No, that's
It's mysterious fluorescent properties, which doesn't really answer it, does it?
Yeah.
I love the sentence, people and rabbits were the first mammals to have shown fluorescent properties. People and rabbits.
Have you ever noticed, though, somebody's hair shining in the dark? I feel like that is a thing I've seen, although I can't remember where. But that feels right, that you occasionally notice a bit of a glow coming out of people's heads.
Yeah,
Really?
could be mine. Look at how magnificent my hair is, let's be honest.
That's true. Mine certainly glows more like a kitchen bowl.
It's very George Clooney.
Nick.
Hello.
Win-win for Gaga. This is in the Times.
Yes, Lady Gaga can keep $500,000 reward she offered for stolen dogs, her stolen dogs, it should probably clarify, not just any. This is in 2021. Ryan Fisher was walking with these 3 French bulldogs and was shot in the chest quite horrifically.
Oh my God.
And Jennifer McBride has tried to claim the reward. The problem is she was in a relationship with the father of one of the robbers. And they did promise a no questions asked reward, but it turns out there are some questions asked. Like, are you the boy? Is your boyfriend's son the one that stole the dog? That's quite a key question, actually.
Is this a grift?
Yeah, exactly. And so
long
she's not going to get the money, and she claims she didn't know the bulldogs were stolen property. No one thinks that makes any sense. And so, yeah, that's the story.
I don't know where these bulldogs came from, but maybe they're yours, Lady Gaga. I mean, the most interesting thing I found out was Lady Gaga's real name, which I'd never heard before. Where was it again?
Germanata.
Yeah, interesting.
Stefani Germanata.
Yeah, I think that's a better name than Lady Gaga.
I think the interesting thing about this story is that the chutzpah of the people who she was claiming the $500,000 prize, she wanted another $1.5 million for
damages.
For damages. After the.
If they hadn't gone for that, they might have got away with it. It's hard to pick out. I can't work out whether they stole the dogs in the hope that a no questions asked reward would be offered, or whether they just shot this guy because he was like a target for some other purpose.
Or the dogs had some value. Those at the time the dogs were taken, they were
French bulldogs.
They were very popular. Now I think people are like.
It feels to me like a classic dog
bulldog
kidnapping.
Yeah.
You know that she's going to want the dogs back. You kidnap them. I can't prove this, but it does feel that way, doesn't it? The fact that this woman who's adjacent to the, she goes out with the father of one of them. They thought that was enough removed.
Yeah.
And then she delivers them. It's all
exactly.
It's like a very bad crime.
Remember Strangers on a Train? Where two strangers meet and discuss and realise they both need somebody killed, so they agree to kill each other's target.
Yeah.
I mean, I've probably got it slightly wrong, but that's basic. So there's plausible deniability. I can't possibly. Why would I be there and killing that person?
Yeah, because somebody else was killed, but one person backed out of the killing and didn't want it to go ahead. It was they not even backed out. It was just a joke that they mentioned it, and the other person took it a bit too seriously.
Can happen. So that's a
great
warning.
movie.
Finally, Lewis, if you want to avoid speeding fines, do not take a leaf out of this bloke's book.
Motorists fined for taping a leaf to obscure their license plate. And this is in Surrey. And Surrey stopped a speeding Toyota Corolla on the A3 in Guildford yesterday.
Then we have a picture, possibly. Keep talking.
Yeah, there was a leaf taped to the front license plate and a leaf taped to the back of the license plate.
You've got to say, he's gone front and square with that, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think. Well, the guy said it was unbelievable. That's what I didn't make that.
I mean, I am intrigued by all these ways that people try and beat speeding cameras. But one thing, he's got a leaf on both plates over the same letter. That to me is like his error, right? Because
it's a
then immediately it's obvious. Whereas in reality, most speeding cameras only get you on the rear camera anyway, don't they? Is that not the case?
Right, but if they're stopped,
yeah,
the cops stop them.
I don't drive anymore, but yeah, he should have. You're right. Built in some more,
more elaborate,
less
not
order in
just
his
the
leaf
same
design.
leaf on the same letter. That's
yeah.
You know, one they used to
Otherwise,
do
it's
a spray
genius.
it with hairspray, and apparently that meant that when the flash came, it would just dazzle it, and it couldn't read through the letters.
One question is, if he advocated this, would the police arrive at his house in a few days? You know, just raiding his house because he advocated covering your thing with a leaf thing. Just
well, it's the exact same thing. If we all covered all our licence plates with leaves, that would be quite. You could call it ULEZ, couldn't you? They're slightly more gentle autumnal protest.
But Nick is right. The police would come if the guy had been working for GB News.
Yeah,
I didn't say that part. Luke said that part.
Now you say that you're kidding.
No idea.
I'm
this
kidding.
guy is even in
I'm
America.
kidding. What is it?
Or where is he?
Sorry.
No, he was in Guildford. Okay, so it is. But yeah. I honestly think he's overdone it there, but he's shown us some sort of path. The show is nearly over. Let's take another quick look at Thursday's front pages. We have the Daily Telegraph with Rishi and wife on the front there. Huge decisions to change Britain. That's banning smoking, changing A-levels, and, of course, closing HS2. Guardian, Sunak invites Tory civil war after declaring he is change candidate. The Times, son of a pharmacist, casts himself as Thatcher's heir. Daily Mail, Rishi gave Tories a reason to believe he can save us from Keir's wokery. Express, game changer, Rishi's radical policy blitz to fix Britain. And the Daily Star, we've really hit the skid. Supermarket forced to put security tags on bog rolls to end shoplifting epidemic. Those were your front pages. That's all we have time for. Thanks to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Nick Dixon. Andrew Doyle will be here tomorrow with Leo Kirsten and Lewis Schaefer. Good night.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, it was the big Rishi Sunak speech at Manchester today where he decided to scrap the HS2 extension, to bring in a smoking ban, to make it illegal for anybody born after 2009 to smoke a cigarette, and he's going to change A-levels. But was it enough? Did it inspire? And were you at home satisfied? I'll be discussing all of that in detail with a great panel after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening to you. Well, as you've been hearing, the Prime Minister has confirmed today that the northern leg of HS2 is being scrapped. Speaking after weeks of speculation, Rishi Sunak told the Conservative Party conference in Manchester that he's ready to make tough decisions for the country. He's defended the move as well, saying the money will be better spent developing projects in the North and the Midlands. HS2 will still run from Euston in central London, but current management will no longer be responsible, he said.
We'll reinvest every single penny, £36 billion, in hundreds of new transport projects in the North and the Midlands across the country. This means £36 billion of investment in the projects that will make a real difference across our nation.
Well, in reaction to that, the former Prime Minister David Cameron has criticised the announcement, saying that a once-in-a-generation opportunity has been lost. And the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, said the new investment plan simply doesn't create a coherent transport network. But Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, while he's disappointed in the decision, said he believes it is a good compromise. Now, in his speech, the Prime Minister also reaffirmed his commitment to stop small boats crossing the English Channel from France.
Our new law will ensure that if you come here illegally, you will be detained and swiftly removed. Now, I am confident that once flights start going regularly to Rwanda, the boats will stop coming. Just look at how our returns agreement with Albania has seen the numbers coming from there fall by 90%. I am confident that our approach complies with our international obligations. But know this, I will do whatever is necessary to stop the boats.
Now, in news away from the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, a murder investigation has been launched after a dog, believed to be an XL bully, killed a man in Sunderland last night. Police responded just before 7 o'clock. Following reports, a dog had injured a 54-year-old. A 44-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of murder. The dog was destroyed at the scene. A second dog was seized. And lastly, a sixth person has been arrested in connection with the Crooked House pub fire in Staffordshire. A 23-year-old man from Leicestershire was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit arson with intent. He's been released on conditional bail while the investigation continues. 4 men and a woman were previously arrested in connection with the fire that destroyed the iconic pub back in August. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Yes, I'm back from Manchester, but it was Rishi Sunak's big day. Maybe the biggest opportunity he has between now and the next general election to set out his stall and to inspire people in this country to go out and vote Conservative next time round. Well, there was one very big moment, albeit it had been very heavily pre-trailed, and it was, of course, unsurprisingly, about HS2. Let's have a look at Rishi's big moment of the day.
I am ending this long-running saga. I am cancelling the rest of the HS2 project. And in its place, we will reinvest every single penny, £36 billion, in hundreds of new transport projects in the North and the Midlands across the country. This means £36 billion of investment in the projects that will make a real difference across our nation. No government has ever developed a more ambitious scheme for northern transport than our new Network North. This is the right way to drive growth and spread opportunity across our country, to level up. With our new Network North, you will be able to get from Manchester to the new station in Bradford in 30 minutes, Sheffield in 42 minutes, and to Hull in 84 minutes on a fully electrified line.
Well, I have to say, I've campaigned against HS2 ever since 2010. I've campaigned up and down that line, and indeed, for parties that I've led, won quite a few council seats on this very issue. I always thought it was madness to spend vast amounts of money just allowing people to get to London far more quickly. And I say that because that was the French experience. The TGV strengthened Paris, not Marseille or Lyon or elsewhere. And the idea that we'll spend all of this money on a huge number of projects connecting cities across the North and the Midlands, I say hooray for that. Although, only thing is, where's the guarantee that any of this will happen in the next 10 to 15 years? And where's the guarantee that actually the budgets will be any better managed than they were for HS2? What else was there in this speech? Well, the big nanny state. Yes, the Tories have gone so far away from being a libertarian party that now anybody born from 2009 or later will never be able to buy and smoke tobacco products. They'll probably go on taking Class A drugs in industrial quantities, but that somehow doesn't seem to really matter. I think it is over-nannying by the government, wholly unnecessary, and certainly not fitting with being a Conservative. And the third big pledge is a big change to A-levels, where rather than doing 3 subjects, you'll have to do 5 subjects, including maths and English. Oddly, before A-levels, we had the school certificate, which was almost exactly that. It's like we've gone back 70 years. Doesn't mean that it's wrong. But overall, I have to say, I think he's a nice bloke. I think he's got a very high intellect, much higher perhaps than many of our recent prime ministers, and a very decent, all-round, good, integrated immigrant family citizen. No question about any of that. But is he an inspiring leader or just a very good accountant? I have to say, I wasn't satisfied by what he had to say today. I was pleased about HS2. For the rest of it, I doubt this will inspire the country. That's my take. Give me your view, please. Were you satisfied? Farage@gbnews.com. Now, I'm joined by Alex Crowley, former political director to Boris Johnson, and John McTiernan, former advisor to Tony Blair. Alex, was this the big moment? Was it the big fight back for the Conservatives?
Well, a lot of people in the hall were hoping that it would be, and his strategy of presenting himself as Mr. Change after many, many years of the same is nice in theory. But the problem was his speech didn't really contain much of substance that was changing anything. The big change item we had was not building a railway line and replacing it with a couple of smaller railway lines and a few buses, which is fine.
This doesn't sound that you were very inspired.
No, well, look, you can overdo the inspirational bit, OK? I think, you know, plenty of voters would much rather a Prime Minister that gets on and does stuff rather than kind of can make a great speech. Boris could make a fantastic speech, but no one accused him of being a particularly good manager of things, right? So you can overdo that. But I think there's a big strategic question here politically for the Conservative Party. They've obviously decided that the party can't present itself as change because, of course, they've been in 13 years and they were 14 by the time of the election. So instead, they've decided that Sunak himself is change because he's only been in a year. He wasn't even in Parliament when David Cameron was elected Prime Minister and so on. And that's fine. That makes sense from a political point of view. But therefore, you then got to go on and actually do things that are different, and you've got to actually change things. And the substance he was offering were perhaps worthy. The maths thing, very worthy. The smoking thing, whatever you think of the nanny state aspect of it, a worthy thing. Most people will agree. But I did struggle to detect what is a big change from Rishi Sunak that his rhetoric was promising.
However, John McTiernan, you see, Rishi Sunak, he's the agent of change because Keir Starmer, he told us, represents that failed establishment political status quo of the last 30 years. Rishi is for change.
Well, I thought wasn't what I tweeted during the speech. I said, Rishi's given a brilliant clip to Labour Digital. He said, the country needs change. I was like, and Labour flipped it. It's been out already. And it's like don't give your opponents a great line. If the country needs change, there's an obvious way to do it. Remove these guys. That's the first thing I thought was problematic. The second thing was, it didn't feel visionary. It felt, here's a lot of things I can fix. Like making a big announcement on education, and you go, and it will come into force in 2033.
Yeah.
Even if Rishi won, even if the Tories won every election until the 30s, Rishi won't be Prime Minister then. And I felt there's a kind of bathos to it. And I suppose in the end, the decision on HS2, there's now going to be a high-speed rail line between London and Birmingham, because it's been extended to Euston. There was a talk of it not coming to Euston even.
And he made that clear today, under a new management company, because he was unhappy with the way it had been managed.
But what it actually means is it enlarges Greater London to include Birmingham. So now the Birmingham property market is going to be within 50 minutes, 55 minutes of central London,
fair point.
Which actually means Birmingham is now part of London. And so it's actually, you're going to create a bigger London. Greater London's not just this Greater South East.
John, I've always criticised
in terms of inequality, that's going to be quite...
I've always criticised...
of what they claim.
I've always criticised this. As I said, I cited the French example earlier. It just drives more business to London, not Birmingham or Manchester. I've never believed any of that. However, his plan to link up all those northern cities, and they all got a mention, the new station in Bradford, Hull got a mention, the Manchester-Liverpool 12 billion investment. But Labour have come back and said that many of the new railway lines he's talking about and the electrifications had already been promised.
So what today was a bunch of re-announcements, some slight reinstatements, because remember when they took the Leeds leg off HS2, they also cancelled Bradford, the station. They cancelled quite a lot of what was then called Northern Powerhouse Rail.
Yes.
So there's a new brand for re-announcing existing promises which haven't actually been through more than, here's the costing estimate. They've not got what would the work take, they've not built in the inflation, they don't know that the 12 billion for Manchester to Liverpool will actually be able to fund that. If it has the same cost overruns, because they've said actually, haven't they, costs have increased on HS2.
This is my worry, yeah. Will all these new projects finish up the same?
And I saw an estimate from the FT correspondent, Jen Williams, that a large chunk, she said up to a third, of the money is going to be spent on potholes. Now, potholes are important, but there's potholes in roads because of 13 years of underfunding of local council. To switch money from rail to that, it feels like there's a lot of spin in the representation, and I suspect it will fall apart over time.
The idea of linking up the northern cities is a very good idea.
Very good idea.
Fine. OK, so we agree on that.
Yeah.
So the Labour response to it has been... Well, they've been critical, but what would Labour do about HS2?
So the first thing is, Labour wouldn't have built such a gold-plated railway. 10 billion of the costs are actually probably thanks to your campaigning. The campaigning in the Chilterns...
Oh, thank you.
led to
well, it's now the largest underground railway in the world.
Yeah. And the irony is, of course, this was done to placate Tory voters who are probably going to vote Lib Dem in the next election. So £10 billion to not even save the seats you want to save is remarkably bad political spending. But I think Labour's position is we now have a massive problem with infrastructure, whether it's rail infrastructure, delivering the northern connections, or the new power connections, or the offshore cables and interconnectors. Such a massive need for them. Something's going wrong in infrastructure development planning, something's going wrong in slowing down the planning permissions, something's going wrong in the design and delivery. So there's going to be Labour will have a review. We can't do anything about it in opposition. We have to be ready coming to government to do
I think it's pretty tough for everybody. What about the advanced British standard, which is, as I said, the sort of updated school cert? The idea that we do five subjects up to 18, so we get a broader qualification, a bit more like a sort of baccalaureate type qualification. Good idea?
Well, I mean, you know me, I'm a Remainer. Closer to Europe we can get.
Oh, they never give up.
We're taking European qualifications.
They never
get European timescale for getting rid of fossil fuel cars. I mean, that's something funny about it. I thought it was very funny. The Prime Minister's great reform is, let's be more like France.
Well, the French did get some things right.
Myself.
He was also going to give incentives for teachers, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, and of course that's
not a bad idea because we do need good people in teaching.
Exactly, and that was the criticism of some of his earlier announcements about school reform, as the teachers were saying, well, you're asking us to do extra work, but you're not paying us anymore, and so that was obviously a very good thing. But it's just, I mean, I'll come back to it. I don't get any sense that the voters of Britain were saying, oh, if only we just had more maths, everything. Do you know what I mean?
Everything better with more maths.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
I tell you what, just go and play darts. Your mental arithmetic would improve pretty quickly there.
Or snooker, very good for mental arithmetic. You know, so okay, fine. It's all very kind of worthy stuff.
Yeah.
But you know, and he did set a challenge to the Labour Party, which would be interesting to see how they respond next week, because the criticism that Keir Starmer is kind of basically trying to avoid saying anything while he's busy measuring the curtains for Downing Street is a fair one, and it's something that resonates with voters, because voters say they definitely don't like the Tories, fair enough, but they also say we don't quite know what to make of this Keir Starmer bloke yet. We don't really know what he stands for. We're not really sure what Labour would do in office. So Labour have a choice next week. They can continue their strategy of basically not saying anything, apart from sort of general platitudes about spending more, which is fine. Or they can kind of outline what they would actually do, not in any great detail, because you wouldn't as an opposition at this point, but to give people so if Labour are the change, then I would like to know what's a Labour change.
He's made it easy for Labour on one thing. He didn't mention legal net migration at all.
No.
We're going to get the figures in a couple of weeks showing over 1 million in the last 2 years. And as for Stop the Boats, I mean, no mention of ECHR. This could have been a real wedge issue with Labour.
So I think a few things. One is, I think it's interesting that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and of Great Britain and Northern Ireland believes his major speech should be about posing a problem to the Labour Party. He talked about Keir and the Labour Party so often you thought, don't you care about Britain? Do you not have a view about Britain's future? So that was interesting to me. But I don't think he listened to what you said during the referendum campaign. He didn't listen to the campaign at all. Take back control. It wasn't stop the boats. Nobody can ever stop 100% of something. What you have to do is have control. And I think the chances of Labour meeting, I mean, that's why Keir went to Europe to speak to Macron, speak to Europol. Somebody who actually can do a deal with Europe is somebody who actually can take control.
And it could be even higher numbers.
And the contest over control is one that Labour can at least take to a score draw, because I think Rishi made a mistake by saying he could stop it. You can never stop.
Well, Tony Abbott in Australia did. Final thought.
He had an ocean, didn't he? He had an ocean.
Well, he did, and we've got a channel, you know. And final thought, Alex. I was in Manchester. There were swarms of young people there. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
The sheer number of young people that were there, hungry for ideas, wanting to believe in something.
Yeah.
Did today do it?
For those people, I'm not sure they found what they're looking for quite yet.
OK, gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. Somehow, he did his best. It hasn't really worked. In a moment, I'll be joined by Shrewsbury and Atcham MP, Daniel Kaczynski, an HS2 supporter. I'll find out in a moment what his reaction is.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, some of your reactions from home. Elliot on Twitter says, no speech is going to do anything to convince me of anything these days. Heard far too many promises with no follow-through. I'll judge actions and their results if they ever happen. Dave on Twitter is so sceptical. I'm not satisfied with any politician's speech because that's all they ever are. I'll be satisfied with actions. Pat, on the other hand, says, I liked Rishi and his speech. I like the spread of money across the country on the cancelling of HS2. I like the A&T levels being combined. As a lifelong floating voter, I would vote for Rishi. Now, I'm joined in the studio by Daniel Kaczynski, Conservative Member of Parliament for Shrewsbury and Atcham. And, Daniel, first things first, I said there were loads of young people up at the conference. A lot of MPs weren't there. You weren't there.
No, but I was working in the House of Commons because I'm one of the Prime Minister's trade envoys, and I was looking after a delegation this week from overseas. But
a lot of MPs weren't there. It somehow suggests, and maybe this speech has changed it, I don't know, but it somehow suggests that Rishi is not inspiring the parliamentary party.
Oh, I don't think that's right. I think he's bringing discipline back into the parliamentary party. The one thing that we Tory MPs crave for more than anything else is the strong hand of discipline. And
Good Lord, what a quote.
And we were floundering all over the place, unfortunately, over the last period under Liz Truss and the dying days of Boris Johnson. The whole thing was not what we wanted. He is starting to introduce a certain degree of discipline into the parliamentary party. And you can't win an election without discipline.
All right. I just noticed there were many faces I expected to see that weren't there. HS2, you've been a strong supporter of the HS2 project. How do you feel today?
Well, I supported HS2 because Patrick McLaughlin, the Secretary of State for Transport, talked about capacity on the network. We had campaigned for a long time for a direct train service between Shrewsbury and London. We couldn't get it because there was no capacity on the network. So I supported HS2. But I actually appreciate the leadership that Rishi has shown.
He says the facts have changed. He says since the 2010 original conception of the plan that the facts have changed, that a lot more of us work from home, etc. Is he right?
Well, there's something else fundamentally important, which is the equilibrium, the pendulum has swung away from engineers and government towards individuals and communities. And having got the scars on my back on trying to complete a circular road around Shrewsbury, I have seen at first hand the power of the Environment Agency, the power of individuals to prevent infrastructure projects from being brought to fruition. And actually, as a result of HS2 not going ahead, we've been given more money for our project in Shrewsbury, which is very welcome. But, Nigel, this is an important thing. very easy to blame the government, but what the media should be doing now is a forensic examination of why the costs have gone up so much. And if you empower people to the degree that we have empowered them to block and frustrate and prevent essential infrastructure projects from being built, then ultimately we all pay the price.
That actually extends to house building as well. Stay with me. Now, joining me down the line is Christian Woolmart, railway journalist, historian, and former Labour politician. Christian, in some ways, you might be upset that this ambitious new extension to Manchester is not going to be built, and yet a lot more railway infrastructure being built right across the Midlands and the north of England. So, in some ways, isn't this good news for the railways?
Yes. Well, let's come to that in a minute. I've never been a fan, like you, Nigel, I've never been a fan of HS2. But there is a problem here. I don't know if you've been to the Chilterns lately, but there's £28 billion has been spent on this, and another 20 billion will be needed to spend just to get to Birmingham, and we'll end up with what I've called the Acton to Aston shuttle, because the Euston bit, yes, that's been taken out of HS2's hands. But, it's going to be years and years and years before that's actually completed, and it is, as your picture is showing now, an absolute wasteland. I cycle through it a lot and it's a disgrace. So, I think we do have to finish the project between Euston and Birmingham. And then it's not an amazingly useful line. By cutting that last bit off, we've actually reduced the function of it. So, in a way, I do recognise that Rishi Sunak and his ministers were between a rock and a hard place. Do you end up spending a lot of money chasing some bad, or do you actually scrap the thing?
Yeah.
They decided to scrap the thing. Now, on the good news, Nigel, I think you mustn't be fooled by that. And you actually said in your introduction earlier that you were a bit sceptical about it. And they've cobbled this lot of projects together without consulting with Network Rail. And I mean, that Network Rail own all the infrastructure. They know all about the projects, and they haven't even talked to them. So they've cobbled this up in a hotel room in Manchester or in some offices in Whitehall without kind of asking, is this one feasible? How much would this cost? The new station in Bradford, well, that was scrapped a few years ago, and nobody, and I've talked to, knows where this new station will go. What does it mean? Now, there's some good projects in there. There's electrification of the North Wales line, which hasn't been put forward before. Great idea. But, in general, it just seems a bunch of projects cobbled together to kind of sugar the pill.
All right, Christian, that's a pretty sceptical response. Daniel Kaczynski, on that, a lot of these are re-promises. We were going to have a Bradford station years ago, then it was scrapped, now it's coming back. There isn't much new here, really, is there?
Well, there's more money for my constituency.
Oh, that's all that matters.
Which is very important. But Nigel, when you are £2.8 trillion in debt, and you will know that we had to borrow $700 billion to get through the pandemic. When you're spending $98 billion a year on debt interest payments, and by the way, the Speaker of the Congress was got rid of because of concerns about their $33 trillion debt. I think it's very welcome news that despite the fact that HS2 has been scrapped, this money will be earmarked for those additional projects, new projects in certain cases, because the budget is very tight at the moment, as you know. And you are a fiscal hawk like I am.
Daniel, if all those... Listen, the scrapping of this HS2 extension, and if the other projects, the tram system in Leeds, and if all of these things were done, it'd be fantastic. If. Final thought. Did your leader do enough today, do you think, to turn things around?
Well, I believe so, and I sincerely hope so. I think we have 12 months potentially to convince the British people to give us an unprecedented fifth term of office. I'm not convinced by what Sir Keir Starmer is saying, and actually, to be honest with you, those hardcore left Labour MPs are still there. They haven't gone away, and I just feel that the country can't afford a Labour government.
Well, we'll have a good look at Keir Starmer next week. Daniel, thank you for joining me in the studio. In a moment, we'll talk about the smoking ban. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Anybody born after 2009, for them, it'll be a criminal offence to smoke. Does that actually work, or just play into the hands of the black market?
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It doesn't really matter whether it's Labour or Tory. They simply can't resist it. The size of government gets bigger and bigger. They want to control every aspect of your life, and Rishi Sunak is no exception to that. Anybody born after 2009 will not be able to go into a shop and legally buy tobacco. So you're going to have this weird situation in 10 years' time where somebody goes in and wants to buy a packet of fags and they're 26 years old, but they can't buy them at 26, but they can if they're 27. The whole thing is bonkers. I should think the criminal gangs must be absolutely licking their lips at the prospect of this. But of course, it's all done in the name of health. And after all, government always knows what's best. Or does it? I'm joined by Darren Haley, co-founder of the vaping company eBurn. Now, Darren, what do you make of this legislation that's going to be on? It's going to be a free vote, he said in the House of Commons, but I have little doubt that MPs will vote for it.
There'll be people that are for and against. My personal opinion and that of the other co-directors of the company for eBurn is that we do think it would be a move in the right direction for banning tobacco, but it has to be in a supportive way. And recently, there has been an announcement for the government swap to stop a £45 million fund, which is going to allow for councils to bid for that funding and get over 1 million people to switch to quit with vaping.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you're a vaping company and vaping is seen as a way out of tobacco smoking. The other debate, of course, is whether it's becoming trendy amongst teenagers. Because he did say about vaping, they're going to start regulating your products in terms of bubblegum flavour and all the rest of it.
And I fully agree with that. It should be not attractive for younger generations, and I'm all for, like with our packaging, it's with the Switch to Quick range, it's just words. There's no pictures, there's nothing to attract children. Our products go into the mental health, so
yeah,
I saw that.
I saw that. But here's the Prime Minister attacking, well, frankly, actually making tobacco illegal for anybody born after 2009. And yet we have a drugs epidemic in this country. Wouldn't it be better to have focused on that?
Drugs, yes, they... but look at the... I'm not sure of the actual figures, but when you look at how many people die per year for tobacco-related illnesses to those that are using drugs, I'm sure that the tobacco aspect would be higher.
Well, we could argue that sugar is now the greatest poison of all. We have an obesity crisis, so why not ban sugar? I mean, all I'm saying is, to me, these things should be personal choices, not for government to intervene. And I reckon if there's a black market in drugs, there'd be a black market in tobacco for anybody born after 2009.
That is a real possibility, but if it's correctly policed, and the vaping phenomenon is consumer-driven, not industry-driven. We're just simply responding to what consumers want.
How big a ban on vaping is he going to bring in? How many restrictions is he going to bring in, do you believe?
My main product is actually a disposable, but...
Which they're targeting, and Australia have banned.
But my product isn't aimed at children, it's aimed at mental health. And 80% of those people that are in mental health facilities do smoke, and when they